a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expanding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this incredibly cool episode, Adam Schell joins us to talk about his personal story in the California Wild West weed game, all the way to microdosing with his new Brain Supreme, which is going to be linked down below, guys. He has an incredibly cool offer, 20% off X Real at checkout down there. Just follow the link. He'll help you out. I want to also point your direction, audio-only audience, to the video version of this. We do have incredibly cool artist Heather Lamb joining us to continue our creative expansion art series here. She does an incredible job and also joins us for the afterthought, which we go really, really deep, guys, on dealing with the insanity of the world, on neuroregeneration, conspiracy consciousness and alternative media, and calling bullshit on the realm. Go ahead and support your favorite show down there in the link below. But for now, and without any further ado, let's get to this incredibly cool conversation with Adam Schell. Adam Schell, welcome to the show here. It is so cool to see you. How are you, my brother?
I'm real good, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
This is so exciting. All the ways, of course, to find you located down in the show description, your Brain Supreme and the lot. Now, we've got some amazing things to talk about here. You've been on a few friends of our shows. We're really excited to speak with you, dude. Very fascinating information and perspective that you have. You're one of the more coherent folks on the subject. And so I'm grateful to, it's not lost in showmanship and you lead with the information. Does this make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest value. That's kind of the way my brain works. So yeah, I'm glad you noticed.
I appreciate the lack of razzmatazz, honestly, and that's okay. But for the audio-only audience, I want to just point your attention to the link in the show description because we have added razzmatazz for you. We have an incredibly cool artist, Heather Lamb, who is here doing some beautiful live art in our Creative Expansion Art Series. Find all the ways to find more out about her as well. I saw she did an amazing diorama with the Strange Road podcast boys, Bub and Mikey, and you guys took a picture. You guys have like these shit-eating grins on your face. It's one of the coolest things ever. It reminded me of like Beetlejuice, but how he makes a little model of the town. You made their set in diorama form, but here today you are here painting. So again, guys, audio-only audience, take advantage of this opportunity to really expand your reality a little bit more here as Adam and I have an amazing conversation about his work. So Adam, totally cool to see you, brother. Just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, man.
So I own a premium microdosing company, a psychedelic microdosing company called Brain Supreme, where we're really about creating premium life-optimizing supplements that incorporate a microdose of psilocybin into your supplement routine. So we've got our flagship formula is GENUIS, which is our most nootropic formula. So we take kind of classic established nootropics, L-theanine, L-tyrosine, alpha-GPC, and we blend in 100 milligrams of psilocybin that we grow at our facility. Then we have Feel Good, where we blend in, that's more for the heart, although psilocybin is the best nootropic in the world. I think unarguably, it's the nootropic that all the other nootropics wish they could be. So so we blend in 100 milligrams and Feel Good with adaptogenic herbs for mood, libido, kind of heart space. And then we have a product called Athlete, where we take 100 milligrams, we blend it in with adaptogenic herbs that are good for performance, natural testosterone boosters, cardiovascular support, recovery support. And then we have our extra strength formula called Black Stack, where it's a 250 milligram microdose that we juice up with nanocurcumin, high quality vitamin C, and some ginger.
Nice. I love ginger. Do you do a good ginger shot in the morning? Have you ever just gone for it raw like that?
I mean, I'm 54 and I've been so in the health space for so many years that I've had a morning routine that's incorporated everything. Right now, I do the whole blended lemon. I wake up, I brush my teeth. I do a little Ayurvedic yoga trick where I brush my teeth and I brush my tongue until I gag to clear the lungs and cough out the spittle. This is a great technique for the immune system because we pool heavy metals and toxins in the lung as we sleep. So before if you need to sip some water, dry mouth at night, of course, but as soon as you wake up in the morning, brush the teeth, brush the tongue in a forward motion and lunger, like really like retch, clear the lungs. And then I do, if you have a sensitive stomach, start with half, you can build up to a whole. I'll take a whole lemon, skin, piss, seeds and all. I put it in the blender. I puree it with 16 ounces of pure water. And then I'll add in chlorophyll and methylene blue and a pinch of salt, real high quality sea salt, Celtic salt, Baja under the tongue. And that's the way I start the day. So I'm not in the ginger phase anymore. I'm in the lemon phase.
Damn. It's fascinating. It sounds amazing, but a little ginger would really set it off. I'm just saying.
It would. Yeah. I am, in fact, post this conversation, I'll probably go back to some ginger.
Fair enough, but it sounds like an amazing recipe. I'm absolutely going to try and I'm looking forward to this new tongue technique here, and my implementation of it will go well ahead of the episode's release, so my wife's really going to enjoy this process unheads up. I'm very excited about it, Adam. Thank you. So how'd you get started in all of this? Did you just, get slipped acid one day and you just saw reality in a new way, or did you slowly walk into this thing, or how did it knock on your door, man?
I mean, I'm actually like very straight laced, kind of, I'm like the most interesting, boring person you'll ever meet. My wife and I basically, we sauna and we cold plunged, and we have friends over. That's the extent of it. So I did have, which we can get into a little bit later, I did have a formative psychedelic experience as a 19-year-old, which we can kind of cut back to. But the genesis of Brain Supreme was I was in the cannabis space. I got in the cannabis space in a really kind of backwards way. My Netflix pitch is the failed novelist turned drug dealer. I had written a novel called Tomato Rhapsody. I had spent much of my 30s working on this book. I got an agent, the first agent that read the book. She loved it. We did a little tweak in the manuscript. The first publisher that read it bought it, multi-million-dollar book deal to a division of Random House called Bantam. And then between the purchasing of the manuscript and the release of the book, we had the 2008-2009 housing crash. The publishing world completely fell apart. The number 1, 2, and 3 at the division of Random House called Bantam that I was with, they all got fired. And then Michael Jackson died the day my novel came out.
Damn.
So it was like,
God,
it was like it never.
How were you
like,
mentally? Were you okay? How'd you take the news?
I was like, honestly, it fucked me up, dude. It fucked me up because I'm not prolific. I'm quality oriented. So this novel, like the whole thing takes place in rhyming verse. All the dialogue is this kind of faux Shakespearean iambic pentameter. It's a comedic historical fiction about how the tomato makes it to Italy, and it tells the story of this forbidden romance and everything. So it was an 11-year process to write the book. And everybody thought I was crazy. I had kind of wasted my 30s, what I was doing. And then it sold, and it sold really huge and looked like I hadn't made it. And I was messed up for a long time. Like, it's interesting, you can process tragedy. Like when a dream dies, it's a different way to kind of process a tragedy. So honestly, it rocked me for quite a while. And I didn't bounce back really all that well, if I'm being completely honest, not creatively. I mean, I got back to teaching yoga. I got back to training. I got back on my feet. I had a wife and young kids and so forth. So I wasn't going to languish, but in terms of like creatively, it kind of wrecked me for a while, honestly. So, but getting back to kind of the genesis of how Brain Supreme evolved. So on the heels of this, I was like, what do I do now? So we were living in Bend, Oregon, going to kind of live this idyllic writerly lifestyle. That fell apart. Moved back to LA, lost weight, started teaching yoga again. I had my first child, seemed to be quite a natural athlete. I started a soccer not-for-profit in the mountains behind Malibu where we were living in Calabasas. And because of where we were living and where we were going to school, there was a lot of influential families, like major, like the families, the 300 kind of group. I wasn't that aware at the time, but like big banking families, major celebrities. And I I'd started the soccer not-for-profit, and just to train these 4 and 5-year-old kids, I had a coach from Europe living with us. And one of my dad buddies on the team was like, hey, man, I like the way you operate. You built this not-for-profit. You got this great coach, all these families. What are you doing? I'm like, whoa. He said, come to this meeting with me. So he introduced me to the California cannabis industry. And I mean, I was fucked up, man. I was in some rough shape financially and emotionally, trying to kind of rebuild my life, at 40, something years old, late 40s. And he took me to the first meeting, and like, it was very interesting because the bar in the cannabis industry was so low at the time that competent and honest was the new extraordinary. And literally within like 3.5 years, I'd built up a multi-million-dollar distribution company going up and down the state. And I wasn't a weed guy. Like I would maybe smoke a joint like twice a year.
But that's the point. You didn't get high on your own supply to the point to where it didn't derail your organization and logistical knowledge of the business.
So like I would, I had 100 farms. I had great buyers in throughout Los Angeles. I had a couple Sprinter vans, a whole security company, retired PD and DEA and local sheriffs, and we were doing amazing. And it was this little community that I was living at the time. There was another dad buddy. Our kids were friends. He was a Russian guy, and we started having some conversation. There was a sauna in the community we lived in. We chit chat in the sauna and talked about what I did and what he did. And he'd grown some weed in the past, and we knew our families were developing friendship because our kids were very good friends. And then I started talking about mushrooms and psilocybin and this experience I had as a 19-year-old. I'm not really a weed guy, but I appreciate weed. It's good medicine, very beneficial for so many people. But I've always been a little more interested in the psychedelic space. And he said, oh, that's very interesting. I come from 4 generations of mushroom foragers. And so as our friendship developed, I just said one day, I said, hey, because I was really cash positive at the time. Like, thank God we were doing great. I said, hey, if I funded you out, would you put up a mushroom grow? I want to kind of explore this idea of supplementation. And he said, yeah. So he put up a mushroom grow, and it was like he was home again. Like it was an ancestral connection. I mean, literally within a couple grow cycles, the guy's just growing the most extraordinary cubensis mushrooms imaginable, and he started to experiment because he can speak and read several languages, so bringing in genetics from Europe. And and then I kind of had this idea of like, hey, I really want to approach this as the ultimate form of supplementation. I got a lot of time to make up for. I got young kids. I'm getting close to late 40s. Like, I want to hack. I want a life hack that's beneficial. So that was the kind of foundation of the concept for Brain Supreme. And then we started blending in other nootropics and herbs and amino acids and really kind of pushing it. It was interesting enough, as we're developing the company, the cannabis industry took a wicked downturn. I was doing so well in distribution that I bought farms. I figured, hey, I'm buying it at $1,000 and selling it for $1,400 in LA. What if I grew it? And a partner and I, we got out of our lane, and literally that and COVID at the same time, and the weed industry crashed it was MC Hammer like the fall. Literally within I bought a new group. We're one of the largest license holders in the state, and then I had another farm. So we were in Northern California. COVID had hit pretty badly in LA. Didn't want to be there. Figured, let me be closer to the farms in Northern California. That was the worst move of my life. I mean, they couldn't wait to bankrupt themselves and torture children in Northern California. Like all those old hippies just lost their minds. It was we can get into that later, but it was very hard year from a family standpoint. Then the cannabis industry starts imploding. The first year we have fires, so we lose almost every pound to smoke damage. And I'm talking like 54,000 projected pounds lost to smoke damage. Yeah, lost to smoke damage. And then it's all in. It's good money after bad. The cannabis industry starts going from like the price in the city is going from $1,500 to $1,200. It's now $700. It's $800, and everybody's predicting it's really going to drop. So then we got to go all in for the second year. There's no crop insurance in the cannabis industry, so we go all in. And then right before the next year's harvest, we get this inverted atmospheric river above Northern California, and over I think 13 days we had 11 inches of rain, and we literally lost every single pound to mold. So after that point, I was completely financially ruined. The price of pounds had dropped to about $500 on the wholesale side in the urban environments. And it basically costs you about $450 to grow it and trim it and pay the taxes on it. And the market had also shifted from what was a diverse. You could have outdoor, you could have light depths, you could have greenhouse, and then indoor to entirely indoor. So we had all these water damaged pounds. They were useless. And I couldn't even hustle my way out of the dilemma that I was in. So I was kind of facing bankruptcy. It was absolutely terrible. I had lost millions, and I'm not a young guy. I mean, I'm fit and I feel young, but like, chronologically. So I'm like 50 years old, fucking just lost everything. I'm depressed as shit. I'm working all the time. California's COVID policies, they're just losing their mind. It was a very, very hard time. And it was stressful for my partner and I because I couldn't fund it out anymore. So he's running on fumes, I'm running on fumes. And we had just developed GENUIS, which is our flagship. So we had cultivated a particular strain of mushroom that he created. We call it Russian Envy. And we were blending it with a particular combination. We developed a little bit of a proprietary blend. So there's certain things you can do with cubensis psilocybin that really maximize it. Take 100 milligrams, make it feel like much more, but in terms of neurocognition and performance. So we developed this kind of proprietary formula, and then combining with the other nootropics. And I was very depressed. And I remember I was driving in the Central Coast of kind of in the Santa Cruz area on the 101 freeway. And I had about 45 minutes earlier, I had taken 2 GENUIS for the first time. And whenever I'd try a new microdosing line of ours, I would take about 10, 15 days off just to flush. And for the first time ever, I felt my brain go thunk to like this new operating level. And I wasn't shroomy, I wasn't stoned, but I just felt like, oh, this is how my brain is supposed to be. It's like if you're an athlete or a runner and you've never had good minerals and your water's kind of depleted, and the first time you drink quality water with electrolytes and minerals and you go out for a jog, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like what's going on? Like I feel amazing. Your joints, your muscles are responding. So I just clicked up to this whole new operating platform. It was the weirdest thing because it just felt like, oh, this is how my brain is supposed to operate. And it was at that point at like the midst of my despair and heaviness and everything in disarray that my brain felt more assembled than ever. And for me, like the miracle of the process and the products we've created is that it really pulled me through. I still wasn't sleeping well. I would still have night terrors and night sweats, but I was able to operate on about 4 hours sleep. I was able to compartmentalize the stresses of my life so it didn't compound an impact on my family. And then we were able to kind of recreate our lives and redirect and say goodbye to the cannabis industry and really move into this brand and Brain Supreme. So it really worked. And the genesis and the origin story for the brand itself is kind of the middle-age rebirth that I needed to have, and that life hack that I'd so desperately wanted, kind of managed to do both things at the same time.
Wow. And you didn't even need a near-death experience or anything. You just said, I'm going to do something new.
It's interesting like that. Like shows like yours, and they're so relevant, they're so high quality, but the guests that you usually bring on have had high stakes experiences in their lives that have had led to a certain philosophical epiphany. But so many of us don't have something quite like that. We have smaller, more subtle. So yeah, like it wasn't near death. I never was like suicidal or anything like that. But for me and the kind of guy that I am, I was at my lowest, and certainly these products helped me organize, compartmentalize, and operate in a higher state of intellectual, emotional, and physical well-being so that I could help shift my life.
What I love about, have you ever seen Deadpool 2?
Yes.
Okay.
My son is a huge fan. Deadpool 1 and 2, fun, good. Deadpool 3 was, don't waste your money.
Haven't been there yet, but thanks for the spoiler.
I'm
still going to see it because I'm a huge comic book nerd. Okay. But Deadpool 2, he introduced a whole team of people, right? All of them have these crazy, amazing powers and stuff like that. And then the dude that just shows up, right? With the mustache. That's you. Okay. Now, what we all loved is that was the most relatable motherfucker on that thing, because everybody wanted him to do well. Even Deadpool himself loved this guy for his basic bitchness, if you will. And that's a compliment, sir. Now, what I love about this is that, yes, we do invite all kinds of folks to come on. Some of the folks that turn out to, at the end of the bad signal, have some pretty remarkable things going on for them in some remarkable ways. But what I love about you, sir, is earlier you said it, and so thank you for the callback. I was going to bring it back up anyway, is that your relatability is why this is so awesome. You just simply walked into this thing, took advantage of it. It changed your life in an amazingly basic way, but again, it's a remarkable way, but it doesn't need to be with all this showmanship and crystals and all kinds of stuff. Like, you can just incorporate it into your daily life and live a better life. And that's what you're here to show us, man. And that's what I love about you, brother. You're that team member in Deadpool that doesn't need all the special superpowers, but he's there in the plane with the team anyway. You're just as impactful. We love you more for your lovability, brother. I mean, this is what's so cool about it.
I mean, I'm down all the rabbit holes, but you don't have to like become a fruitcake in the process, you know?
Exactly.
And for me, what's really going on in the world right now, like you have to kind of, you have to think clearly. You have to think pragmatically. You have to embrace your personal power. You should be working on getting physically strong, intellectually strong, emotionally strong. And you should fill, I think, a certain gender role. Like it's never been more important for like a man in the kind of most glorious sense of it to act like a man, to lead your family, you know, be there for your friends, be there for your community and be strong and be fit and be clear-minded. So that's, yeah, that's my thing, man. Like I want to, I understand these concepts. I have a sense of what's going on in the world, but you've got to be like really strong and clear. Like now is not the time to be a fruitcake.
You know, and what it's about for me is connection, and you're absolutely right. It's about priorities. And there's a lot of levels to this, right? There's a lot of levels of being introduced that the world is all connected and stuff. And so some folks will take some variant paths. It's interesting, again, though, that you had an anchor to ground you and your family and your wife and your children and everything to sort of navigate a more straight and narrow. And maybe you don't even have the disposition for that at all. So no matter what the trip was, you weren't going to go far left of where you are anyhow. You've just got a really cool true ass compass, man. And I really dig it. I really do.
No, thanks. I mean, look, but I've been there. Like literally an Indian guru walked into the room when I was 30 years old. And I'm like, what am I doing here with all these like sheep, you know, chanting Om Namah Shivaya back and forth. And there was a light beam that came off of her. She wasn't even looking in my direction. She was 75 feet away. A light beam came off her, hit me in my heart, exploded both directions, like the most profound Shaktipat experience. So a 240-pound former Big Ten linebacker is in a puddle of bliss on the floor, like crying in ecstasy and so forth. So I've been there. I get it, but I think my company, my brand, our company, my personal disposition is like show up in the world, you know, be a good and responsible human being and work to perceive truth and act truthfully as best you can.
Love it, dude. Love it. Again, you just the connectability here with this message is what's so remarkable and awesome. Honestly, we really find it refreshing. Okay, so you've already told us about the Wild West days of the weed game there, but what is microdosing and why is it different than just taking, you know, a 5 or a 14-gram dose or something like that? Like your normal dose, you know?
14-gram dose.
That was the first time I ever did it. I did 14, and I didn't know any better, son. I did not know any better. I just gave the guy $30. I took all of it, put it in a blender with some Kool-Aid, and took all of it.
Wow. How
We had
long
fun.
were
It was
they?
like a 16-hour trip, honestly. It was
Okay.
very intense, and I puked like almost pretty quickly after, but it was still so. I mean, it lifted the head up, whole new world. It was amazing, but probably not
for your listeners out
recommended.
there. For your listeners out there, that is about 3 times the classic 5-gram historic heroic dose.
Yeah.
So that is really quite significant. Okay, so the best way to understand microdosing is in the context of the heroic dose. So traditionally, now mushrooms are grown stronger these days. So if your listeners like, you should ask some questions. If you're picking up bulk mushrooms, you should ask some questions. You shouldn't just assume to go 5 grams because certain strains can be much stronger. So that you want to get your mushrooms from somebody who you respect, who seems quality. Ask them the strength. Ask them what they think the dosage should be. That's some of the responsible shit that I should say. But historically, the heroic dose has been considered to be 5 grams. So this is the therapeutic. I'm going to journey, 4 to probably 6 hours, and I'm going to meet Jesus, my ancestors, meld with nature, all the values and virtues of why we do these things, the kind of spiritual, emotional insights. So that's 5 grams. Microdosing happens at the sub 10% level of that. Now it's much easier to speak now in milligrams. So 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. So if a macrodose is 5,000 milligrams, a microdose is somewhere between 1 to 400 milligrams. That's the kind of accepted range. Everybody's neuroanatomy is different when you microdose. So some people's microdose might need to be 5 or 600 milligrams. Some people might really be good, depending on the quality of the mushroom or the product you're using. Some people might do half a capsule, might do 50 milligrams. But historically, microdosing is 100 to 400 milligrams. And the value in this is that, so there's an expression in Buddhism that once you hear the Dharma, the die is cast. So when you have the heroic macro experience, the lights in the room get turned on and you see a whole new pattern of consciousness. And when that journey ends, the light goes off, but the pattern of the room, even though it's dark again, you understand where the furniture, metaphoric furniture lies. What the microdose does is it just continues to walk you towards that light, whether it's done in conjunction with a macrodose that you might have had, or you're just going to start with microdosing. Microdosing, in its kind of best sense, moves the brain in a beneficial direction in very small and incremental steps. So it provides you some level of emotional support, physical support, intellectual support, neurocognitive support. It's tremendously anti-inflammatory, so it can even help improve the vision and the hearing a little bit. And the interesting thing with both macro and microdosing is that these mushrooms tend to meet you at the level of your need. So for some of our customers who are combat veterans, PTSD, suicide ideation, they've seen some real shit, major depressive disorder. I've got some traumatized divorcees, and they might even talk sometimes about a 50, 60, 70%. They feel better. They stop having suicidal ideation. They stop having night terrors. On multiple occasions, I've had people that their sleep improves immediately, and they'll stop having night terrors. And then a little more subtle, maybe guys like yourself, like myself, we're fundamentally handling our lives. We might have stresses. You're going to get a 5 to maybe 15, 20% bump in your overall efficacy, how well you're performing from a neurological standpoint, your brain functioning. You might start feeling better. It could improve the libido. So somewhere in that realm. So, what I like to say with microdosing is it's a slightly expensive supplement that you notice. I'm into fitness. I've always been into alternative doctors, functional MDs, integrative MDs, naturopaths, chiropractors, high-level nutritionists, kind of alternative nutritionists, you could say. I've been in that space for 30 years, and I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on supplements and so forth. And, the thing with supplements is I think they work. I hope they work. Everybody else got sick. I didn't get that sick. But when you sprinkle a little psilocybin into your supplements, you're like, oh, okay. I know what I just spent, $80 or $90 for. It's like it works. So that's really the best way to kind of manage your expectations when it comes to microdosing. It's an expensive supplement that you should notice.
I like that. That's a great way to put it, and I love the way you say that, because how many, like you said, how much money have you thrown away on shit that you just been like, I think I took vitamin C and I'm not as sick, I guess. It's more kind of placebo at that point, but if you're going to take something, you might as well notice it. I dig that.
Yeah.
So there's been some talk of these things being conscious entities themselves, and that perhaps that they are parasitic in nature and that may come in your mind and then take you over and then drive you around. Now, the parasitic nature of them specifically seems to be more of connective in nature. It seems to be more nature oriented as well. You seem to prefer outdoor spaces, less crap going on around you, less noise and nonsense from the news. It just seems to lean you in a direction if it is a parasitic consciousness itself. So what are your thoughts on that? Maybe it's a control mechanism that's actually getting people out of the funk and steering us towards a higher path.
I wouldn't use the word parasitic because it's
gross.
It's just pejorative. Because it should be, especially in the day and age we're living in, that word should be specific to truly parasitic. I think the thing with the term parasitic is it connotes that it's negative and it's bad for you, and it leads you in a false or malevolent direction. I think there is something to the consciousness of mushrooms, the way they work with humans, where it's symbiotic. I've never met a person from a macrodose or microdose experience who wasn't moving in a beneficial direction and didn't ultimately feel better. Now, I do think there's something symbiotic. I think the mushrooms are essentially using us to advance their mission, which is their own self-preservation. They need a sustainable and quality environment in order to kind of do their thing and live their lives. So nobody wants to see the destruction of our planet and our consciousness. So I think mushrooms are essentially using us just the way that we're using them, but it's symbiotic in its nature. It's symbiotic in its relationship, and we're both working with each other towards a more optimized and benevolent space. I think the notion of a parasitic relationship with mushrooms is kind of negative, and I wouldn't necessarily use that language. I would use this kind of I'd use more like a little bit more of a symbiotic, benevolent relationship.
It seems to be the difference in people's experience, which is always subjective, right? Some people have the experience in the contactee phenomena where they feel like they've been contacted and they had a great time. They were taken up on a UFO and it was awesome. The other people would describe it as an abduction. So the same phenomena allegedly get two different perspective experiences. Some people have had horrible trips on mushrooms, and some people say that things in their home started happening as far as freaky woo-woo things that connected to their experience they had after taking a pretty heroic type of mushroom experience. So it's interesting whenever we get you get to shadow and the dark, right? And perhaps that motivates in different ways, and who knows? But to say it's 100% has not been my experience as well.
No, that's not
horrible experiences on mushrooms.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I completely agree with that. But the interesting thing about the bad trip, I think there's a statistic on this that Dr. James Fadiman, who's one of the OGs in the space, talks about, is that when 60% of people who were surveyed who had a bad trip, when they reflected upon it, still found value in the trip, a lasting value, that the shadow, which was so hard that was exposed to them in that trip, they don't want to do mushrooms again, but that experience proved ultimately to be beneficial. So yeah, it's like hard isn't always necessarily bad.
No, not at all. And if you learn from it and it's beneficial, that's a beautiful symbiotic relationship that you're willing to put in the work of hours of sitting with it for, right? Because there's no off switch. And we're, as a 24 plus year psychonaut, man, I've been into a lot of it. And it's just interesting that I've gotten simply to a level energetically where the bigger doses for me just aren't symbiotic. But the way that you are appropriating it, I think it's very, very interesting. And again, this stable, sort of steady as she goes, I pictured it like you're holding a little torch instead of seeing your flashlight that keeps clicking on and off. As you utilize psychedelics, you've got a good flashlight and the light turns on in your metaphor that you spoke of, which is a beautiful metaphor. And then, like you said, it always keeps the light on or moves you towards it. I just pictured that you get a little bit more illumination and a steadier time instead of it strobing, for instance, and you getting glimpses of truth and then back to darkness. So it seems like a pretty interesting, steady as she goes way to keep on a focused path, man.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And I think that when you start to microdose over a course of time and you can kind of reflect back, you might notice that there's been some real changes in your lives. For me personally, after 6 years of this development and microdosing, I've noticed what I call this etheric-mycelial network. So in the film Fantastic Fungi, which is I sold my soul to the pharmaceutical industry and the NIH, Fauci, Paul Stamets. Paul Stamets is one of the world's leading mushroom experts, probably the world's leading mushroom expert. And he's had a really bizarre turn of kind of pro-vaccine and so forth and using mushrooms to support vaccination and so forth. So the mushroom community's really kind of fallen out with him, tremendously disappointed. But I don't want to shit on the entirety of his work and the scope of what he's done, because he's done some incredible things as well. As heartbreaking as this is to me, his recent turn, specifically referring, if your listeners are intrigued by that, they could go to his last Joe Rogan when he was on, was just fucking blew my mind. But besides that, this film called Fantastic Fungi kind of deals with the life and work of Paul Stamets, and primarily the way the mycelial networks, which are the mushroom fibers in the forests, connect the trees and relay the information of the forest. And they can a tree can communicate through the mycelial network that there's a pest that's encroaching this tree, and these other trees, on the, kilometers away need to start producing these certain chemicals. And then they even think it can relate to the birds of prey, that communicating through the mycelial network to the trees, to the birds of prey to catch a salmon and eat the salmon on this tree because this tree needs the fish guts, the root system. It's quite amazing. And it's this network, it's almost a neural network that interconnects the forest. I've found over the cumulative benefit of microdosing for all these years is what I call the mycelial network. It's literally from my heart and kind of my third eye here, that network goes out and, oh, like here I'm meant to connect, I'm meant to give with other people. Now I'm meant to receive. And it's this kind of authenticity of heart and mind in my interactions and connections, a deepening of empathy, which has really been nice. It also lets me know when, hey man, it's not there. Like that root network is not, it's not connecting
Not
and just go, just say bye-bye, compartmentalize and extend the roots in another direction. So there's been a cumulative benefit with microdosing, this kind of increase of empathy. As well. It also kind of puts the wind in your sails in an interesting way. The best way to really understand psilocybin at the microdosing level, I say this a lot, but it moves the brain in a beneficial direction whether you're cognizant of it or not. If you are cognizant of it, if you have some intentionality to your microdosing and you've got some goals and some things and some new habits you want to form, it can really help put the wind in your sails.
What a nice counter energy to everything around you, right? Everything around you wants you to bait you into it being slowly bad for you, and give you a little here, give you a little here, this is free, and then bad. But this actually, it goes ahead and takes care of that, and you get caught up by realizing that you're just operating super cool and awesome now at this point. What a cool, thing. I dig that, man. So where's God come into all of this?
Oh, that's interesting. So, okay, I was listening to, so when it comes to the wellness coaches, the wellness MDs, the functional MDs, the functional biologists, the Hubermans, the Atias of the world, Dr. Berg, who I actually like very much on YouTube, Mercola. I have this expression of like, you're either like a true healer or you're a glorious narcissist. And I view the world through the lens of COVID. I think if you're a community leader, a governmental leader, a business leader, a health leader, a religious leader, spiritual leader, if you got COVID wrong, for me, I just, there's too many brilliant people in the world who had vision and integrity for me to spend any more time with those people. They might have some insights, they might have some interesting things to say, but they exist in a box now because that was the litmus test of our generation and actually multiple generations of where you're at from an intuition, intelligence, and integrity standpoint. So if you got COVID wrong, there's too many brilliant and people out there with integrity who I can follow. So I kind of dismiss them. So, and I don't want to like slander anybody and so forth, but I'm listening to Huberman, who I kind of put into the glorious narcissist category. I have this philosophy that I call exquisite miseducation, that you went to all the right schools, you got all the right degrees, you jumped through all the right hoops, you've got all the right wealth, but like ultimately, what have you educated yourself in? Have you kind of miseducated yourself, or at least a significant portion of your career, academic career and professional career, have you miseducated yourself? And for me, COVID's like a really clear demarcation of that. Like if they got that wrong, like, okay, like I've got too many other people that I'm going to spend my time who got it right and had integrity and led other people to make better choices and really see what was going on. So that said, I'm listening to a podcast with this Carhart, a British scholar, PhD, David Carhart, I think is his name, and then Huberman. And they're basically trying to break down and quantify all the analogs of psilocybin. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why am I getting irritated by this? Like, am I getting irritated by this because like they're richer than me, they're more accomplished than me, they're in the same space, but they've got these degrees in this platform. Is this my ego or is there something else going on? And I don't want to discount my ego there, but like, I finally like it dawned on me, like I'm frustrated by this conversation because there's no aspect of the mystical. There's no aspect of the divine. It's just about how can we quantify this to know what analogs hit on what receptors in the brain, because once we've quantified, the cult of science and scientism can own it and we can remove God from the equation. And it really that's really what bothers me about the science movement of psilocybin. Like for me, it's all kind of fucking stupid, man. If you look at the history of psilocybin, yeah, some people take 14 grams at like a heavy metal concert and have a terrible trip. So there's people who do dumb things with the product, but like, if you compare the injuries that Tylenol have on a daily basis, it's more than the history of psilocybin as a psychedelic in its entirety. The profile of this plant medicine is profound and extraordinary. And so do we need all this science about it? I mean, it kind of it moves your brain in a beneficial direction, whether you're cognizant of it or not. And if you're cognizant of it, it moves your brain in that direction even faster. So there's something for me a little sinister and a little dangerous about this quantifying all the different analogs and aspects of psilocybin, because once we've done that, science can own it, they can patent it, they can trademark it, they can schedule it so only these therapists and only these medical providers and only these pharmaceutical companies can now use these compounds and the rest of us can't. And so I find that the modern scientific conversation of psilocybin is trying to remove God and the divine from the equation. And that annoys me. And that's also very sad to me.
What do you think the role of God is in the equation?
So, the concept of okay, what is God? What is the divine? For me, the answer is when do I feel the most divine? When do I feel the most presence of God? It's when I'm authentic. It's when I'm present. It's when I'm feeling love or joy or I'm with family. So the concept for me of what God is when I am most authentically present and joyful in my life, whether that's in meditation or in prayer or just hanging out with my wife or my kids, or I'm in nature somewhere. So hold on. I don't want to lose the original question. Let's go back to the original question real quick.
You're here, just God in the equation, and you're crushing it.
So for me, what psilocybin does is it just keeps the divine light on. Just like I said, like the microdose, every day, I'm a little better. I work out a little harder. I'm a little more aware when I'm not being present with my kids. There's a concept called witness consciousness in Buddhism, right? That you're not your thoughts, you're the witness to your thoughts. You're not your body, you're the witness to your body. And I've had people who don't understand this language or these concepts tell me, hey, this is the interesting thing. I started microdosing and I was yelling at my kids. And I kind of felt myself kind of go over here and I'm watching do I need to yell at my kids? Do I need to get this angry? And then I was get angry for a little second, but then be loving and come back. And I'm yeah, that's witness consciousness. And so that's what the macro for sure, the micro does in these small ways. It does for me relate some element of the divine so that you're more present in your life and you look to engage the world in kind of a more loving, benevolent, and collaborative and cooperative capacity. It's really what it comes down to. Even me as a business, people write me and I have this thing. I'm going to get back to you almost immediately. Sometimes it'll be shockingly instantaneously, but I have to do voice to text or voice to email. So there might be some malapropisms and some just roll with it and people get it. And it's a little thing in our community that's forming. It's kind of a joke, but I'm very responsive. But look, man, if I have a vet and they're hey, I want to try this. I'm hey, here we have a special discount for veterans. I call them up. I said, here's this discount, or which is, my business would go bankrupt if I gave it to everybody, but for the veterans, the people really struggling, I'm, first responders, I'm totally happy to do it. Or I tell people, I'm look, there's a course that you can go on with microdosing. It might not be for always. You might want it to be because you love the idea and you love the concept and you love mushrooms and you might like our company, but 6 months of microdosing might have done the trick for you. And you can either stop with it like yourself. I offered you samples. You're I'm not in that space right now. I get it. And so microdosing for me, even though I have the pressures of a business and, this kind of near bankruptcy, if I was in any kind of, legal capacity with the cannabis industry, it would have been bankruptcy. But even as I'm building and rebuilding my life and need to rebuild my family financially, the importance of acting with integrity, the importance of acting in what I feel is alignment with God and the divine has never been more paramount and more important in my life. And I literally think the microdosing helps with that. I know when I'm out of alignment, I know when I'm not right right, with God or authenticity. And I think it's why I kind of do well on these podcasts, because people get it. Like, the guy's authentic, like he means it. And I do mean it. And I think that the microdosing helps with that. And I do think it relays a little bit of divinity to you, in that it's walking you towards your higher nature. And that's the one thing in these scientists, and look, they got to do their thing. Everybody's got jobs and blah, blah, blah. But like, that's the thing that bothers me, as kind of psilocybin gets pulled into the cult of scientism, that they're removing the equation of the divine from it.
Definitely. Yeah, they need to keep their grubby hands off of it, right?
Right.
Even though LSD and MDMA were created with intention of that, I've heard you speak about this as well, and you're bang on with this. That was created with the intention of that, so that tulpa yielded the result that it was created with. But mushrooms have been here long before anything, man, and so it's, when you look at this consciousness of its own, it's fascinating. It's just awesome.
And when you also look at when you go down the rabbit hole of like the CIA and MK Ultra, they never were really successful with psilocybin. They've been successful with LSD.
That's a great point.
For sure. But psilocybin, and even, because it's competition. It's not competition, but I've experimented with microdosing LSD, and I don't enjoy the process the same way at all. It's weird, like I'll do a microdose of LSD, and then 6 hours later, I'm like going over a Texas overpass, and I'm like, oh, I could die. Like, this is no fucking joke. Like, I got to stay on point. Like, it brings up this anxiety later in the day where psilocybin just kind of grounds me much more so. So that's just my own little aside. But yeah, psilocybin is very interesting. It's the other thing about the science is that they create synthetic psilocybin. I'm not in both the cannabis industry and the psilocybin industry. I'm not a fan of single molecule extraction. I think that there's a multitude of cannabinoids and alkaloids and beneficial compounds that God put there to exist in their entirety. And I'm not a fan of single molecular isolation. I think you lose something. So they do all their testing with psilocybin with the single molecule extraction, which I'm also not a fan of.
Yeah, because it can get proprietary, right? I mean, it's just a slippery slope all around. I mean, the unpatentables, the natures, that's where it's at, right?
100%. And also the whole idea that literally the worst organization, not even just like, I mean, you could, there's like, you could talk about the Jesuits or Illuminati or this or that, but like in terms of things that we can like literally look at and understand and see the documentation, like the pharmaceutical industry is like literally the worst organizations that's ever existed in the history of mankind. It also ties in completely to some of the more esoteric, occultish concepts. But like, if you think for a second that like handing these compounds and these products over to the worst organizations in the world, run by the worst human beings in the world, are suddenly going to do something benevolent for the good of humanity, you're out of your fucking mind. Like when all these old hippies at MAPS and Stamets, they think that they're going to partner with pharma and do good in the world. Fuck you. You're out of your fucking mind. I mean, a tiger doesn't change its stripes, and you're deluding yourself. You're absolutely deluding yourself if you think that Pfizer and Moderna and GlaxoSmithKline are suddenly going to create a product that is so good and so beneficial that you might only need to take it for 2 or 3 months or 6 months or maybe one dose and you'll be done with it. Bullshit. Entrepreneurs like myself, guys like you who, have a whole different philosophy on life. We're not trying to support institutionalized networks of hundreds of thousands of employees and shareholders. Hey man, one pack of GENUIS. If, I tell people all the time, don't go on auto renewal. Don't go on the subscription. Just try one, man. It's expensive. It works for 97% of people. It might not work for you. Let's just do one. See how it goes. Like, could you imagine a pharma rep saying that? Walking into a doctor, hey, just do one packet. Let's see if how your patients react to it, and if they're good with it, then then maybe we'll do it. It's not how they operate.
And it's how they operate that shows their intentions.
Yes, yeah. Judge them by their actions.
Yeah, it's like the octopus. It's another tentacle of the octopus of global control, right? Charlie Robinson's book from Macroaggressions. Yeah, awesome dude.
Good dude. I was on his podcast. We become friendly too. He's a really good guy.
Such a sweetheart, isn't he? I know. Okay, before we run into the afterthought here, I've just got another question for you, and I'm just curious, man. We're absolutely going to be linking all of the ways to find you down in the show description, as well as our artists. So audio-only audience, if you've not checked that link down in the show description yet, check it out. There's a free video version in damn near 6 places that you can come see Heather Lamb create this beautiful piece here. I mean, this is absolutely amazing, and we're going to chat with her a little bit in the afterthought as well, but want to point that link out as well, the Patreon link to join us for said afterthought, and that is a wonderful way to support your favorite show. Come see all of the bonus content that we have, join us for the hangouts, all the good things. Adam, are you happy, dude? Relatively, like just in general?
So, it's so interesting. I was going to start the podcast that way, but I'm like, nah, don't hijack it. It's his show. So like when you ask me, how are you? Like I always say, oh, look, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, thank God I'm good. It's great to be on the show. But like the truth is like, it's a dichotomy, dude. Like I'm fucking angry. I'm fucking angry. I'm angry. I'm great. I've got a company that means something to me. I got a wife that I love. I've got great kids, but my kids are like doing things in the world. Like my son just got back from, Europe, where he tried out with top European soccer academies. My younger one he's a 7th grader. He's 6'1", 203 pounds, and he moves and he hits people. He's a great athlete. And it means something to them, and they're already training, and they already are trying to do well enough in school. We're kind of have, as you listeners could imagine, we have a certain attitude towards school, but they're doing well enough in school, and they've got friends, and they've got great friends, and they're very interesting. These kids, like they smell bullshit, the whole political correctness and the kind of woke culture. They completely resist that. They're funny and they were irreverent with each other. Like they're great to be around. So I'm great and I'm fucking freaked out and I'm furious at the same time. Like my 16-year-old is handsome. Like I got to be worried about who he's going to kiss because of fucking genetic transference from these mRNA shots, this bioweapon that was produced into the world, Like my kids like to wrestle and do jiu-jitsu, but now I got to think about sweat and genetic transference through sweat, I'm weather manipulation and what's going on and how much are they going to fuck with Texas because they hate Texas and they're fucking with North Carolina and they're about to fuck with Florida. This broadcast is about, this is before, but there's a hurricane that's never really traveled in quite this direction that's about to laser through,
it
Florida.
Might not be here when this comes out. We'll see. Yeah. What a fun thing to look. I don't know. We'll see. Go ahead, Adam.
So I'm great, but I'm aware, I'm awake, and I'm really fucking angry. The whole concept that like there's some bizarre group of I'm just going to pull all the hats out, but like adrenochrome drinking pedophiles, globalist control from ancient bloodlines who are so directly affecting my life and the life of my children. I'm great. I'm fucking angry and furious and freaked out at the same time. What can I tell you? That's the real answer.
It's a great answer because
and
it's honest.
Honestly, the microdosing helps because like, look, so what do I do? So, we train. My family and I train. We stay fit. We eat right. We've got some chickens going. We got some gardening going. We're doing as much as we can with the, financially as we can afford with some preparation. We go and we train with a technical military guy. So if God forbid things go south, like we have some level of preparation. But I also pray because I wake up every morning about 3:30, and as opposed to grabbing my phone, I would prefer to be able to sleep straight through, but ever since I had this mystical experience, I almost always wake up at 3:30 and I just sit and I pray and I meditate and I do some breath work for about an hour. And I mean, yeah, look, I try to hold my family in love. I hold the world in love, my community in love. I hold even those people who seem to be oppressors in some sense of love. I try to evoke the Archangel Michael and Angel Gabriel and Raphael, and I call down Christ consciousness. I'm bringing it all, man, because like we're in a battle. And before I used to teach yoga, I studied yoga. I had a Shaktipat experience with an Indian guru. I'm the son of a rabbi. Like I understand spiritual concepts of non-duality. But when you have children in the world, like it's so different because you want to see a prosperous and successful and beneficial world for your children and then your children's peers and community. And when that's under threat, like it's really weird, like what it does to your head. So you got to have like, you got to pull out all stops these days, man. You can't eat their food. You got to get what I say, you got to get Satan out of your diet, you know, don't drink his water, you know, don't, you know,
You see that Dr. Pepper say, "Not today, Satan, get."
Yeah. So like, don't drink their water, don't eat their food, you know, purify yourself to the highest level you can. And even energetically, emotionally, like take a time to purify yourself. Your supplements should work on purifying yourself. Like some level of being prepared for what this world seems to be evolving into is a very good idea. And for me, it's like a spiritual and emotional necessity as well.
Beautifully said, man. I mean, that's absolutely awesome. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up here. You are going to get the final question. I'm just going to remind everybody, everybody's linked down below. Guys, definitely check it out. I mean, you're a fascinating, sweet guy.
We want to do the promo code. Yeah,
let's absolutely, guys. This promo code is going to be linked down below. I'm going to let him tell you about it and his answer here to close us out. Also, just want to remind everybody to check the video version and all the ways to find Heather Lamb, our incredible artist here, who's just creating forest magic. That's mushrooms would grow there, Adam. What do you think?
Well, you know what?
Right in there.
I keep my glasses off for these things, but oh wow, that looks great.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, that's really good.
And of course, we're going to be, you know, it'll be all a part of everything. But Adam, tell everybody about the offer that you have for our audience here, which is amazingly generous, brother. And let us know at the same time what gets you out of bed every morning.
So the promo code is going to EX-Real, right? Expanding reality. We'll do EX-Real. It can be all caps, lower caps. Don't worry about that. And that'll be for a nice, juicy 20% discount on the website. That can be for one order. That can be for multiple orders. And we're going to run that from the day this podcast drops for 20 days, just to kind of incentivize to give the product a try. And then after that, for the perpetuity that this program is up, we'll do a 15% discount from like after 20 days, we'll go from there. So to support your listeners, if they want to give the product a try.
Badass, man. We'll get you up everyone. Yeah.
So look, I'm going to be totally honest here. Like I wake up at 3:30 to pray and meditate. It's always begrudging. I always wish I could sleep through the night. I can't sleep through the night. I'm not going to grab my phone. I know better. So I get up and I do my prayer, my meditation, breath work, and so forth. But then I tend to fall back asleep. I have what I call my glorious second sleep from like 5 to about 6:15, 6:30 or something. And honestly, what gets me up is I make a bulletproof coffee, the Brain Supreme version of bulletproof coffee. That's what gets me up, man. I can't wait because I know I got to wait about 90 minutes before I do my coffee. And so I figure like the sooner I get up, I can get, make lunch for the kids, get them out the door, do everything I need to do. And then I get to make my coffee, which is, we have it up on the website. It's a Brain Supreme version of a bulletproof, and that's the only thing I eat for about 6-7 hours. Cause I'll do it's usually like a ketogenic, a hybrid bulletproof Brain Supreme coffee. It's on the website. It's a free download. I put in all kinds of adaptogens and nutrients, and I take my Brain Supreme at the same time, usually blah, blah, blah. So that's the thing that gets me out of bed, if I'm being completely honest, is how delicious and how much I love my ritual morning coffee.
Just want to take a moment here and thank Adam Schell for dropping by and dropping the hammer. Join the link below and check out his offer, EX-Real, at checkout, guys. All the ways to find him, of course, located down in the show description. Absolutely incredible offer on his Brain Supreme. Looking forward to taking him up on this, actually. Also, want to point your attention down there to Heather Lamb's information. Go check out this incredibly cool artist and thank her for the amazing job she did. She's got some fascinating work that she's got all over her socials, and they are linked down below, guys. Thanks for your support in advance. Now, also, speaking of support, we are both going to be joined in the afterthought by Heather Lamb, Adam Schell, and I, and we go into it, guys. So come hang out with us while we talk about dealing with the insanity of the world, neuro regeneration, and of course, conspiracy consciousness and alternative media, as well as calling bullshit on the realm. Join us in that afterthought. Great way to support your favorite show, linked down in the show description. Just want to thank you guys for being awesome as fuck and moving out into this reality, just keeping your shits about you as we navigate this wild realm. Continue to be awesome. You are crushing it if nobody has told you that recently. And also, while you're out here crushing it in general, just pick up a piece of litter, get the fuck out of the left-hand lane. And above all, on anything else, be good to everybody. That's it. Just be good to one another. Thank you so much for watching, listening, subscribing, sharing, telling all your friends about it. We'll see you next time.